Etgar Keret is one of Israel's most prominent contemporary writers. He has been critical of Israel's war strategy and has spoken out about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Welcome back to DW, Etgar. It's great to have you on the programme. You are among hundreds of cultural figures in Israel who've recently signed this petition, accusing the Israeli government leadership of starving Gazans, killing innocent Palestinians, in essence alleging war crimes. Can you tell us about the reaction that you have received to this in Israel?
Yes, first of all, if I have to share my vision, I don't think what I see is some kind of a conspirative thought. What I see is an irresponsible, and racist and soulless government that keeps zigzagging, the same way that Donald Trump does, and the collateral damage taken from it. It's not only, we don't get the kidnapped backs, but we have children and women and civilians dying every day. We have more people uprooted from their houses. We have more hungry people. So I'm saying, when we started this war after the 7th of October massacre, it was a defensive move. It was a move to release the kidnapped, to return our security. Right now, it seems as if, the chief of staff doesn't exactly understand what are the purposes of the war. And when Netanyahu says in Fox that it's just temporary, he wants Palestinians to run their country, just not Hamas, then from the first day of the war, everybody, people like me, said, okay, the Palestinian Authority can take responsibility and push Hamas away. But Netanyahu doesn't want the Palestinian Authority, and he doesn't want the Hamas. He wants some kind of an abstract, non-existent Palestinian who are kind of okay by him and his settler friends, and they are the only ones who can take back Gaza. Now, if we wait for those people to come, then Israel will be there forever.
Okay. Relatives of Israeli hostages still being held in Gaza have loudly protested against the Israeli government's new plan. Do you share their concerns?
Yes, I think that from March, when we returned to Gaza, then what we see is a lot of the population suffering, a lot of people dying, some soldiers dying, the kidnap situation gets worse. Nobody explained to us, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are our targets? We've already killed all the prime leaders of the Hamas. They don't have real infrastructure. What are we doing that is worth this price of killing Gazans, not letting Gaza return to any sort of normalcy, having the kidnapped kept there, and if the operation will go larger than according to the chief of staff, they might get killed to it. And not only saying that, that the Israeli army in Gaza, if they occupy Gaza, it will be a sitting duck. It will be just like Vietnam. We're going to sit there and what?
Etgar, I'd like to ask you, so you're critical of the Israeli government and the lack of a clear plan, and as you say, the bloodshed, the people who are dying in Gaza. I wanted to ask you, though, about a survey published by the Israeli newspaper Harets, which suggests that a vast majority of Israeli Jews, 79% in fact, are not troubled by the reports of famine, of the reports of suffering in Gaza. What's your take on these statistics? Do you think that these numbers are encouraging Netanyahu's government to take even more radical actions?
So, since my wife and I and other people took this stand, we've been getting, a lot of attacks and criticism. And the strange thing is that we get a lot of this criticism from people who we've been demonstrating shoulder to shoulder with for years, even before the war against the government. And the idea is that I say to those people, you have two reasons to end the war: to release the kidnapped and to stop soldiers from dying. I have three. I don't want to kill civilians. I don't want to occupy other things. But apart from that, we want exactly the same thing. I must say that I would want the people fighting by my side fighting for some kind of universal, liberal, human-loving reason. But even if they don't, then I'm saying we basically want the same thing, So when I stand and hold the picture of a Palestinian child and a woman stands in front of me and says, "Don't you see that this kid is not real? It's AI." Then I don't think that I'm taking place in a coherent ideological conversation. I just feel that there are people who are shell-shocked and scared and don't know what hell is doing, and they're just moving from one spin to another. It's really like if you watch the news in Israel, a week after week, they say the opposite things. Nothing is consistent, and very little makes sense.
So would you say that there is not an open and constructive public debate in the Israeli media about how this war is being conducted?
Yes, because what I think is that the majority is against the government, but the moment that you come to criticize the army's action, then in Israel, the army is basically a compulsory army. Every family has somebody in it. So the idea of blaming the army for doing wrong is kind of like synonymous from blaming Israel. This is a very kind of simplistic and not sophisticated way of looking at it, because what it says that because our family is there, you cannot criticize us. I always criticize my son and my wife. I only criticize those I love. I don't think that if you love somebody, then you shouldn't say to him, "Be careful, don't do that, do this, this was wrong." That's how a society operates.
There has been criticism, hasn't there, from within the army about Netanyahu's, the way that he's taking this forward. Can you envisage a point where soldiers, where the IDF just says, we're not going to do this anymore?
Again, I think that here is this kind of paradox of this idea of the army of the people, law-abiding, etc., and the government that is lawless and has no boundaries. I think that, if you look at Netanyahu, my metaphor for Netanyahu is like he's driving a car recklessly in a forest fire. And everybody says to him, "Hey, man, let us drive." And he says, "The moment that the fire ends, I'll let you drive." But all the time he spills gasoline and lights it, So what I feel is that this kind of ongoing dynamic of an unjustified escalation that has nothing to do with the benefits of Israel, with the benefits of mankind, with any human thought, it keeps on going and going and going just to stop us from sitting here and say, who is this guy? What the hell has he been doing? Where has he taken us?
And he says now, doesn't he, that he wants military control of all of Gaza. So in your opinion, what would the implications of this decision be?
Well, it's very easy to say that economically, Israel can't support it. It can support it, but as all the other systems are crashing because of the expenses of the war, it would be a mad thing. Now, the idea is that this would mean that Israel would occupy and take care of all the services in Gaza. Now, again, it's a Vietnam scenario. You have a lot of soldiers in a hostile environment, making people's life miserable, but just keeping them alive. What good can come of it? And the idea is that if you want the Palestinians to run their own life and you don't want Hamas, you have the Palestinian Authority. The fact that, that all this seems to be some kind of an excuse to keep a coalition with radical settlers that don't want the country. So you just kind of juggle and say, I want this perfect non-existent Palestinian to negotiate with, to buy some time, then this is something that the Middle East can't take. Neither Gaza nor Israel. We're falling apart. Things may look normal, but the situation of 2 years of people waiting for our brothers to return, seeing senseless action being taken as a diversion when they dismantle the Israeli democracy, it's enough.
Etgar, you say that things are falling apart. On that note, can I ask you if there is anything that makes you hopeful that this dynamic will change, that things may change for the better?
Well, I'm saying I'm a fiction writer, so I invent scenarios, and I invent to myself a scenario in which there is already a deal with the Hamas, and that Netanyahu, to appease his base, make all this kind of move of we're going to occupy Gaza. So when he signed it, he could say it just because I was strong and I pushed them to it. You know, that's my fantasy. You know, okay? If it has anything to do with reality, I just want this needless war to end. You know, the kidnapped to be back, and the people in Gaza to be able, you know, to have some of their life back. That we can start a process where this entire region can get out of this incredible trauma that we keep experiencing and creating, you know, day by day.
Etgar Keret, Israeli author, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.